It's Tommy on tap, baby.
I'm a man. I'm 40.
Gonna bite a kneecap off.
On the last play of the game.
It's Tommy on tap.
All right, hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the next episode of Tommy on Tap. I'm Kevin, here with my brother Bob. We've got our dad Tom. If you like the content here, like to talk about sports, particularly football, college, and the NFL, please subscribe. If you like what we talk about today, hit that like button so we can make sure we get more content like this to you. But without further ado, Tommy, what do we got on tap tonight?
Brian Kelly, the highly successful college football coach whose rise from Assumption College in Worcester, Mass. to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and the Louisiana State University Tigers. And you know what? As we get into that conversation, let's not even mess around. Let's just get right to the bartender here. In Michigan, it's spring. It's Oberon time. So I know me and Bobby are drinking an Oberon. I'll buy that. Kevin, what are you having tonight?
Yeah, I haven't seen it hit the shelves down here in Maryland, so I picked up some stuff from Flying Dog Brewing Company, which is here in Maryland. I got Vicious Hook, Fruit Punch Sour. Not going to lie, it's not my favorite. I tried sipping it a little bit, but I've got a couple other from a variety pack that we'll try here in a sec, too.
Well, then we'll have to go through this first round quickly so Kevin can move on to a more delicious beer. But, Oberon's my favorite beer. It's so good.
It's Oberon or Two Hearted, and boy, these Oberons just taste so good.
Yeah, I think some of it too. Like, I love Two Hearted, but I think something about Oberon's just signaling spring is here. The weather's getting nice, able to get outside and grill much more frequently, and it's just nice to have some nice weather again.
Absolutely. Well, what do you got about Brian Kelly and LSU, Bobby?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that this is going to be one of the more interesting new hires. I think one of the topics I thought we could talk about for Tommy on Tap at some point is just kind of figuring out who we think is going to be one of the more successful coaches in their new job. And, I think Brian Kelly has seen success in every single place that he's gone. I don't know if you can say there's a ceiling at Notre Dame, but I don't know if things were going to get if they were going to go any further than where they had been. So I think this move was probably the right call for Brian Kelly to head down to LSU. I'm really excited to see kind of another juggernaut coach down in the SEC and the SEC West. The SEC East is so stacked with Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. But I think it'll be good to see LSU kind of ride that wave that they were on with Orgeron, and I think that he's going to see a lot of success there.
Yeah, one interesting thing I saw while I was kind of reading different articles about this, that someone, I don't know where I read this, but someone said Brian Kelly's probably the most successful coach to be on the sidelines in Baton Rouge since Nick Saban left, and barring the fact that a couple national championships were won with each of the past two predecessors, they weren't great coaches. They had great talent there, and they were able to win some games. But Brian Kelly is probably a much more accomplished coach than those guys. So, Dad, I think you said the last three coaches to coach at LSU have won a national championship during their time. So I think the stakes are high for Brian Kelly, but what a challenge for him.
Yeah, I mean, Les Miles, he followed Nick Saban. He's a Michigan man. Went down there and won a championship. Then, of course, Ed Orgeron, had that great offense and just kind of, like you said, Ed Orgeron's a great guy, great defensive line coach, probably not the greatest head coach in the world for sustaining a program. But, I'll real quick, Bobby, and I'll turn it back over to you, to talk about it. But he has gone from being an assistant at Worcester in Assumption College to being an assistant coach at Grand Valley and then the head coach at Grand Valley. And, from around here, Grand Valley's 45 minutes from us. He was 118, 35-2 and went on a 4-year run there. It was just unbelievable. He was a great football coach and really, really epitomized, the Division II level for a long time. And that's continued on even with Ferris State now. And Grand Valley's still a great program that has followed his lead. Then he took over a Central Michigan team that was really, Mike DeBoard. Central had a lot of tradition, and Mike DeBoard, another Michigan guy. Everybody hires a guy that coached at Michigan, and he just didn't get it done. And Brian Kelly came in there and in 3 years got it done. He was only 19 and 16 at Central, but he really laid the foundation for the next guys that have gone on at Central. Of course, then he followed, our great coach that we love, Mark D'Antonio, at Cincinnati. So he had a great thing. And this is kind of similar, I think, as he rolls into LSU, with Cincinnati and all the great players that D'Antonio left him, and the great tradition and the program at Cincinnati. He went 34-6, led him to I believe, wasn't it a Cotton Bowl or, game that he didn't coach in, because he went on to Notre Dame, where, he was 92-39. And Bobby, you talk about a ceiling. He's the winningest coach in Notre Dame. He's had 4 or 5 years in a row of double-digit wins. He's taken a lot of heat there. He went through some ups and downs. I think he really transformed himself while he was there. A disciplinarian, a tough coach that I think really learned how to adapt his style to the players of today. And I think you saw that a little bit when he went down to LSU with his videotapes and how he's now going to try to maybe...
The one of the criticisms, right, they have of him is I think he said, like, well, it's difficult to recruit here at Notre Dame because of our academic standards. And I know that, Bob, you had mentioned that the new coach there, Freeman, had said, like, forget that. We're going to go recruit. We're Notre Dame. We're going to go get people. And if that was his mentality before, it seems like that's the one thing he figured, like, I got to go recruit. And it's... Yeah. I think we all think it's hilarious, the videos on Twitter, but hey, the kids are posting them on their social media pages, like they love it.
Yeah, they think
somehow him dancing with call him Baton Rouge in the background is somehow like a thing. It's good for his family, so it's good.
Hey, it's all good, man. It's and now he's at LSU, so and I think as we get going, talking about his coaches, I think he's really put together a great coaching staff that is going to epitomize the recruiting of those great players that are in the state of Louisiana.
Yep, yeah, and on that, he got a lot of criticism when he was trying to put that staff together initially. I think people thought Tommy Rees was going to follow him, maybe Freeman would follow him down there, and they didn't. They're like, nope, I think they saw the writing on the wall. One of them was going to get the head coaching job at Notre Dame. They didn't follow him, but he did put together a good staff down there when you do the final analysis.
Yep, I like the hire that he had for offensive coordinator. He took Mike Denbrock from Cincinnati. Who had been with him at Grand Valley. He went with him to Notre Dame there for a while before he got hired in with Fickle. Fickle and Denbrock have been together the entire time that Fickle's been at Cincinnati. And Fickle is, of course, a defensive guy, played nose tackle at Ohio State. So Denbrock has been the offensive mind behind the success of Cincinnati since 2017. And I'm interested to see how his offense will do with those LSU athletes, because Cincinnati in those last 5 years since 2017, their recruiting classes have been in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s rank wise. So I think that's a good thing though on Denbrock and Fickle, because it's a testament that they can coach them up and they can take those guys and put in good schemes and coach those kids up. But seeing him with the LSU classes, in those same 5 years, they haven't had a class lower than 15. They've had I think 4 of them have been top 10. And out of the classes that are currently on LSU's team, there's a 3rd-ranked class, a 4th-ranked class, and a 3rd-ranked class. So seeing how Denbrock's offense is used with those athletes, I think is going to be really interesting. They run a lot of inside zones and they run split zone concepts too. So they'll kind of empty the box out and they'll key the linebacker that's lined up on like a slot receiver, and they'll just run RPOs all day. They'll run like some bash concepts, and I think that having Jaden Daniels transfer in from Arizona State now. When you think of LSU in the last few years, they've had, Mussenberger and Joe Burrow is more of a pro-style quarterback. He's mobile, but he's still a kind of a pocket passer. Where in Cincinnati, you had Desmond Ridder, who could pull the ball, kind of sprint out, and make some more athletic plays. And I think you're going to see that in LSU, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I think that team will be a lot of fun. I think they're going to be one of those teams that just is putting up 55 points because, they're...
Wow, you remember what league they play in, right? they do have to play Alabama and Georgia.
I know, and that's kind of. I don't think that they're going to have a perfect season. I think they're going to go 9-3. I think they're going to drop some stinkers, but I think that for the majority of that schedule, I do think they're going to put up some points on people. Their wide receiver room is 1 5-star and 9 4-stars. 1 5-star and 9 4-stars. And when you list the NFL players that are from LSU, wide receivers, it's OBJ, Jamar Chase, Jarvis Landry, Justin Jefferson, and the guy the Lions just signed, DJ Chark. And among them, that's 12 Pro Bowls, 5 All-Pros, 2 Rookie of the Years, and a Super Bowl. They always have one of the best receiving corps in college football. And I think that Denbrock's offense is going to really open up the passing game with those RPO and zone running concepts.
Yeah, if Kelly was right that one of his big problems at Notre Dame was you just couldn't recruit the type of talent that you need, well, this should solve that problem, because they should be able to recruit a lot of gifted athletes to play in the system, we've seen what this system can do at Notre Dame with guys like Tommy Rees, who's a decent quarterback, but he's not an all-world athlete kind of guy. We've seen what it can do with a great quarterback in Desmond Ridder, but with some 3-star guys outside of there. And, it'd be interesting to see what they can do with these 5- and 4-star athletes down there in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, he's got Miles Brennan on the campus right now, and then I think his name's Walker Howard. He might have been one of the top pro style quarterbacks back a few years ago or a couple years ago. Might have been a 4 or 5-star. So there's some competition, but I think, boy, you got to be happy that when they start spring practice, which they start in 2 days on the 24th, I think Jaden Daniels is going to be on campus and going to be part of that. So they've got to be pretty excited about that. And I will tell you, I really like another hire he had at D coordinator. Obviously, I think he would have loved to have taken Marcus Freeman down. But Matt House, he's been with the Chiefs. Before that, he was, running the defense at Kentucky. For Stoops, when Kentucky won 10 games, and really has been part of building that into really one of the tough surprise teams in the SEC every year.
He's a Michigan State grad.
Really?
According to Wikipedia, yeah. I don't know that he played, but he was a Michigan State grad, and then he was a GA at Michigan State, and then just had a couple of stops, FIU, then Kentucky for a few years, and then with the Chiefs at linebacker. Some time under Spagnuolo as well at St. Louis, I think.
I'll add on to that and say that Denbrock is born and raised in Albion, and he was a GA. He played at Grand Valley, but was a GA at Michigan State before linking up with Kelly.
Hey, and Brian Polian, his dad Bill, great NFL general manager. Brian did travel with him from Notre Dame down to be the special teams coordinator. And when you talk about recruiting, you mentioned this, Bobby, and Kevin about his recruiting. One of his big hires, actually made 2 of them, was his running back coach and his quarterback coach. And so let's talk about that here in a minute. But I don't know about you, but I drained that Oberon pretty quick. And Kevin, I'm interested to see if you found a beer you like. What do you want for round 2?
So sticking with Flying Dog, but this one it came in some kind of seasonal pack. Maybe this is their spring release. This is an Orange Crush ale, so it's not much of a description, but it looks like it's going to be some kind of ale with a little bit of like an orange flavor, maybe a something thrown in there while it was fermenting or something. I'll let you know when I get it open. All
right, and Bobby, I know you and I are loving our Oberon, so we're going to be good.
I'm drinking Oberon for the rest of the summer till they take it away. That's there's nothing better in the sun than drinking some Oberon.
Yeah, sometimes you got that all day IPA.
Yeah.
All day IPA is nice around the lake there, out at Kevin's lake house. Well, hey, Frank Wilson's the one I was going to talk about. I think Frank was a huge hire. He left LSU for a little while and went to McNeese State, I think. I could be wrong about that, but he's a guy that recruits the heck out of Louisiana, as well as the quarterback coach they got, who has great connections. He was at Louisiana Tech.
Yeah.
And
they say he was Skip Holt's recruiting guru, I guess, down there at Louisiana Tech. So Kelly's smart. And hey, listen, if, like you said, Miles won, Ogeron won, Saban won because he's just great. But Brian Kelly's going to win there.
I mean, there's no two ways about it. We talk about the new coaches and what they're going to bring. He may go through a little bump as he, puts his mark on it, just like every great coach does. But I think once he gets it rolling, man, they're going to love him down in Baton Rouge.
Yeah. What do you guys know what LSU's record was this year under Orgeron?
Not good. Maybe limp to 6-6, maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking 6-6, 7-5 type of territory. I don't think it was actually really that bad. I think it was probably more 7-5.
Things really kind of went bad, because I think Orgeron, there were some things going around the program that we've heard about now. That is the one thing that Brian Kelly's going to have to deal with is, the basketball team and the football team are dealing with some really bad, possible recruiting violations that happen, and that they're going to suffer. The basketball program, I think, has already been hampered. They just hired the head coach from Murray State to try to solve that problem. So Brian Kelly is going to have to deal with that.
It reminds me a bit of kind of Lane Kiffin. However you feel about the way he left Tennessee, when he got to USC, I think he did a pretty dang good job dealing with all of the sanctions, may not be the right word, and maybe I'm thinking of geopolitics right now, but whatever the restrictions on recruiting there and things like that. He did a pretty good job, and as he's been able to move around to some other places, he's shown that he's a good, successful coach. I think Kelly might face some of those same challenges. Like, the deal Orgeron got to not coach kind of gave you the idea that he knows something. That there was some hush money there. We don't want you here. We don't want you to talk. Here's a ton of money to go away and mumble about whatever you want to down in the bayou, man.
He was his worst enemy. I mean, and again, it's he's one of those guys. I mean, he's a great football coach. I love to listen to him talk, even though I can't understand everything he's saying. And I'm sure he's a great recruiter, great D-line coach. But, the day-to-day to run a program, it is what it is. I mean,
you got to be a little bit more disciplined and Sabanian than what he is to really run one of those programs like that.
Yeah, you can only be so many, everybody loving your, Louisiana roots and everything, but I think they're going to love Brian Kelly down there as he gets this thing done.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, I think, to see from a schematic point, offensively and defensively, if we see some changes to simplify the scheme a little bit. I've seen some clinic tape with Dave Aranda when he went down there, and he was just kind of comparing the type of athletes and the type of kids that they have down there, and that they will recruit based on physical ability and not necessarily football IQ. And so they like he was saying, this was kind of Orgeron's model while they were down there. So a lot of kids on the roster, it didn't necessarily matter your understanding or knowledge of the game, but what are your measurables? How high can you jump? How large, like all of those kind of things that they measure in a pro world. And Aranda's thought he had to change his scheme a little bit. Things that the folks he had up at Wisconsin couldn't necessarily, that they could do just adjustments on the fly. These guys didn't play football that way growing up. They played football based on their raw talent and speed, and he would simplify the scheme, and that was what made them was best for those athletes that he had there. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of adjustments House has to make or Denbrock has to make to take advantage of the type of kids that they have.
Yeah, let them play fast. Yeah, I think it'd be great to go down, but obviously you can't just jump on a plane and go. But I think of all the spring practices, State's going. I'm looking forward to go and watch them a little bit. When I think Western's rolling, and go watch Western Michigan. But it would be great to go down there and watch spring practice there. I know I'll get to Michigan this spring and watch them a little bit, so it'll be great.
And kind of to that point about the scheme, particularly defensively, House coming from the Stoops background, the Stoops and Pelini tree has a lot of overlap in scheme, and I know Bo Pelini didn't have a lot of success in his second stint down there, and I've watched some of his clinic talks of his hour-long things installing his defense, and it is a very cerebral, like, understanding how formations affect like minute alignments and what you do. It's very much based on not so much on what can my athletes do, but hey, this is my scheme that I run, and I've got to get you guys cram you into this hole. And I think he suffered a little bit for that. Whereas Aranda was able to adapt his scheme. He gave up more points than he did when he was at Wisconsin, but he was still able to be successful there. And so it'll be interesting how House is able to apply a very similar scheme with these guys and get them to be successful.
Yeah, you shared some of that stuff with me that Pelini was doing, and I'll be honest with you, It's complicated for me. Your brain works much more on a higher level than mine, and as I watched it, it was difficult for me to grasp. So I could see how that would be the case. But he's had Brian Kelly. The other thing that he's done, and I know we judge coaches sometimes on their coaching tree. So real quick, and this is a long ass list. I was surprised, but Brian Van Gorder, is a from that tree. He'd been DC at Georgia, I believe, and he's had a successful career. Butch Jones, up and down, he kind of lost it a little bit at Tennessee, but Butch has been a successful coach. Jeff Quinn, who was at Buffalo and, followed him in some other places. I don't know Charlie Molnar, but Chuck Martin, real familiar with Chuck Martin. Chuck Martin followed him at Grand Valley. I was really surprised that Chuck Martin wasn't the guy that followed him at GVSU and then potentially could have followed him at Cincinnati if he'd have done that. But Chuck stayed for a while, and now Chuck's at Miami of Ohio. Bobby Diaco, Mike Sanford. Mike Sanford's been around here. And here's the interesting one for me, Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur, the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, was a GA at CMU. And then in 2014, he was the quarterback coach at Notre Dame. And 5 years later, he's the head coach of the Green Bay Packers and has won 13 games 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row. And Matt LaFleur's done a great job. And he came from there. Autry Denson, a former Notre Dame player. Clark Lee, who's now at Vanderbilt. He was his DC. Robert Saleh, who's the head coach of the Jets, came somewhere from his tree. And, of course, Marcus Freeman. Marcus, I think he's going to be really successful at Notre Dame. I'm excited for him, and that's maybe something we've talked about, all the new coaches. Marcus, I think, it's going to be an interesting year for him. Yeah. And then Mike Elko. Mike was in that tree also. I think he was also at Texas A&M, but he's now the head coach at Duke. When you look at guys like Clark Lee and Mike Elko, real cerebral guys, defensive guys, went back, I believe, to their alma maters to be head coach, Vanderbilt and Duke. I might be wrong on Elko, but Elko's a great, great coach. So that's a hell of a tree, man. When we look at guys, and pretty successful. So I think he's a pretty special coach. I'm rooting for him. I think he's going to do great things.
I think they start the season out. They don't have a ramp-up game. Their ramp-up game is week 2, but week 1 they've got Florida State. And Florida State is obviously down, but for Brian Kelly to be in his very first game at LSU, I think that Florida State one, there's obviously going to be some things to iron out in your first game, and I think that one's probably going to be a lot better than people might assume. Because I think when Brian Kelly was hired, I looked it up. They were 6-7 last year. I think everyone automatically thought, okay, so they're back to a 10-win team upon his hiring.
I think what you said 9 earlier when you said maybe 9. I think that's probably more accurate.
Well,
we'll see.
I
agree with you.
9-3 with a bowl game. I think by the end of the year they might have it figured out a little more. They got to get through Lane Kiffin. They got to play Nick Saban. Probably they're probably not going to beat Ole Miss unless it's a great game. I mean, maybe they're not going to beat Alabama. You also have to play just like Texas A&M, who beat Bama and can easily steal a game. They could just have a mediocre year, but I think that 9-3 and then play their bowl game, maybe get to 10 wins is not out of the question.
Yeah, they got a tough schedule, and let me tell you this, their first SEC game is against the Pirate himself, old Mike Leach.
That could be interesting. He embarrassed, if I recall, he embarrassed the hell out of him last year, or the year before. So
that is not an easy game to jump on when you're going in. And I was trying to see here. I'm not sure if they have to go down there and listen to all them damn cowbells. But if you've got to go to Mississippi State, that's a pretty tough run. Anyway, it's going to be. Listen. The SEC, it's loaded. Every week's going to be great. It's just going to be even better,
So, what else are we thinking in sports? I think we kind of we probably circled the wagons on LSU.
Let's switch gears a little bit now and maybe talk about some of this free agency stuff. Or
Tom, what stuck out? What stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean the quarterbacks obviously was huge. I'll save the big one for last. But when you look at what went on with what Indianapolis did, trading for Matt Ryan. I think, Matt Ryan's a great quarterback. He's had a great career. If you look at all his stats, I think he has a chance to be successful in Indianapolis. My only concern with that one is the wide receiving core in Indianapolis. I think the weapons there are questionable. And I think that if that's the case, I think it's Michael Pittman maybe that has to be the go-to guy there, and that's going to be a tough one.
Well, see, here's the interesting, and he's not very healthy all the time, but who is Matt Ryan's best friend? I don't know if they're best friends, but Julio Jones is a free agent right now. I would not be surprised at all if Julio Jones goes and signs a deal with Indianapolis and plays with Matt Ryan. You don't know how many games you're going to get out of him, but the games that he plays in are, he's going to give you some yards. I think that them signing Matt Ryan will probably, I don't know, there's not a whole lot of guys left. The free agency market, wide receiver wise, was pretty much picked.
And on the heels of Matt Ryan signing with the Colts, the Falcons picked up Mariota, right? And that's got to be they're taking someone in the draft, right? I mean, what are you thinking for that?
Or you wait till next year.
Well, Mariota played under head coach what's his name, Smith, with the Falcons.
Arthur.
Anyway, Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith was the OC in Tennessee when Mariota was there. So I think he knows what he's getting. And I do think Atlanta's saying, hey, listen, let's rebuild this thing. I mean, how long we've talked about this before. How long do you want to go 6-11 or, 7 and make sure I'm getting the numbers right. We're playing 7.
Hey, he was fired. Dan Quinn is the head football coach of the Atlanta Falcons.
Oh, when did you just read that? I think you're reading old Google News.
Because Dan Quinn was the head coach of the Falcons, wasn't he?
Oh, okay.
Took him to the Super Bowl, but they sure as hell didn't bring him back in a day, I don't think. Okay. Unless Arthur Smith was so pissed that he had to use Marcus Mariota.
This is it. I'm done,
check
guys.
the date on that Google entry.
I'm sure it obviously Quinn must be wrong.
Yeah, holy smokies.
I don't think his name is Arthur either.
It is. It's
Mike
Arthur
Smith. Mike Smith. I was thinking
Mike Smith was the head coach before Dan Quinn.
Jesus Christ.
Holy cow, are you taking shots already before the last round? Get off Google. All right, I'm going to continue on with my quarterback synopsis now.
Arthur Smith.
And Arthur Smith, thank you, and all those other coaches. But anyway, take us down the Atlanta Falcons memory lane, Bobby. Appreciate it.
I'm cutting it out anyways. Anytime.
This is beautiful. That conversation needs to be in there. It does. But anyway, the other quarterback news that I think is kind of interesting is how Baker Mayfield has just kind of talked himself right out of the NFL. He got upset when they were courting Deshaun Watson. And, he got upset and he started whining. Who's going to take this guy? I mean, why would you take a guy? And I think he's talented some. He's not the greatest, but my gosh, everywhere he goes, he brings controversy. And I heard, I don't know the NFL analyst that was on Get Up with Mike Greenberg, but he talked about he wishes that Baker Mayfield would get back to the Baker Mayfield that walked on at Texas A&M, that walked on at Oklahoma, that has had his chip on his shoulder the whole time. And when they tell you they're going to go out and get somebody, instead of whining about it, you just say, hey, I'm going to buckle up and I'm going to beat this guy out and we're going to win games. I'm the quarterback at Cleveland until I'm not the quarterback at Cleveland. Because now I think you'd have some NFL guys saying, okay, let's see what we can do. But that was just the opposite. Started out on Twitter with his whiny thing. Gosh darn, man. I wouldn't want him at my place. It's unfortunate. But maybe he'll end up in Seattle. He ain't going anywhere else, I don't think.
I think the ironic thing is that he probably will be the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns for the first 8 games while Deshaun Watson is suspended.
Hey, I heard something interesting, though. They were given the NFL today. I was listening to if you ever listen to the NFL Network on Sirius, and you listen to Jim Miller and I can't remember who Jim's partner is, but he's great. Both of them are great. They might be the best on the radio about the NFL. The NFL may go ahead and let these 22 civil suits play themselves out this year.
I heard Peter King was talking about season, this.
And then Roger Goodell tell the Browns, don't screw with us now, because the way you set up his contract, if I suspend him now, he doesn't lose any money. He loses nothing. But if I suspend him next year after these contracts go through, then he takes a penalty and we all look, for lack of a better word, maybe okay.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens on that.
that was just kind of what the Browns and Watson negotiated for that first year of the deal, was that he would be paid regardless of suspension, but it's just for the first year.
Guaranteed money, which is the NFL can't touch on not being paid for game by game. Speaking of that, not to jump off subject because I want to get right back on it, but did you realize, Bobby, you told me to explain this whole pay by game, and you get taxed by the city you play in? Yeah, so I always thought that if you were an employee of the Dallas Cowboys, when you played an away game, you were still paid by the state laws of Texas. But that's not true. So you actually are paid by the state laws, meaning in this context the tax rates of the games that you play in. So now that it's a 17 game season, I think you alternate whether or not you play 9 or 8 games at home, but either way, all your away games, you're taxed that state's rate. So I was reading something online where you would be able to make the most money out of your contract if you played in the AFC South, because Tennessee, Florida, and Texas do not have state income. So you would play, if you played for the Titans, then you would have all of your home games, so 8 games a year, untaxed. You would play 1 game against the Houston Texans, untaxed, 1 game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, untaxed, and then you might coincidentally play in other untaxed states, but you would always be guaranteed those 10 games or 11 games
without the state taxes.
Yeah, without the state taxes.
Being an accountant for the NFL must be tough business.
I don't think so. When you take that 1%, it's probably a lot easier.
That's true. Kevin, anything on the free agent front that struck you?
No, I mean, it seemed like it reminded me a little bit of the college football coaching carousel this year, where all of a sudden it was some big moves happening. Like, I don't think anybody, personally, I thought it came out of the blue that Matt Ryan he's a Colt now. That was quick. Obviously, the Colts had to do something there after getting rid of Carson Wentz, which wasn't a shock that they got rid of him. But
right.
I was surprised to see Matt Ryan. I was surprised how quick the Falcons signed somebody else. Interested to see how some more of these dominoes fall, but hopefully it's not like the NFL coaching or the college coaching carousel where when we thought it was dying down, then you'd see Brian Kelly's leaving now or whatever. That was a wild offseason.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked that Matt Ryan was only a 3rd round draft pick too. And I guess when you think about it, that's probably all he's worth. But for us seeing Stafford traded last year, I think Stafford's been in the league just 1 year fewer than Ryan. Ryan was drafted the year before him, and we saw what Stafford got. I mean, 2 first-round picks for the Lions. So to see,
I think with Matt Ryan though, we've seen he's been surrounded by the talent he needs to be successful. He got real close, and then they've kind of fallen apart since then. Whereas Matt Stafford is always the kind of, what if we got the right guys around him? There still might be something here. There was still some ambiguity out there about what he could do. So, and obviously they got the right guys around him, and he went and won a Super Bowl, right?
Another big thing is Devontae Adams being traded. I mean, the Packers offered him more money than what he ended up taking from the Raiders, but he just wanted to be a Raider. His best friend, roommate in college, and quarterback Derek Carr with the Raiders, obviously. And
he probably heard our podcast about the Raiders and was like, you know what?
He probably did.
I want to go down there.
Win, baby.
Yeah.
So that was real interesting.
I was going to close this thing out with something about Deshaun, but I really don't want to waste my breath on it. What I'd like to do is talk about Matt Stafford, because we're already talking about him. And, he signed an extension, a 4-year extension. It was a team-friendly extension. He's only 6.7% of his team's cap hit, which allows them to go out and make a signing of Allen Robinson. There's rumors they're going to get Bobby Wagner. They're now working on the deal for Aaron Donald. And I'm going to tell you what, I am just, the whole commercial this weekend at AT&T, Matt Stafford is just balls to the walls. I love him. He's great. I think he truly loves Detroit. I think if you had to sit down with Matt Stafford and a beer, he would probably tell you he wishes he won a Super Bowl in Detroit more than anything in his world. Kelly probably wouldn't say that, but I think Matt Stafford does. And so in closing out this, that contract is going to help the Rams. I'm all for the Rams. I'm all for Matt Stafford. And I hope they sign Wagner, the Honey Badger, and anybody else that wants to win a Super Bowl with them, because I'm happy for that. And look at, we didn't even talk about Tom Brady, for Christ's sakes, but we can't go on. We got to move on to our last week topic.
Oh, let's do another round first.
We absolutely have to drink, and we're going to do our shot with our beer, because that's how bad this whole week has been for me and Kevin, not for Senor Bobby, who's in first place right now.
Well, see, we're talking. Yeah, but obviously, we're talking March Madness brackets. I'm only in first place because, it hasn't progressed onwards. I'm done for. Like, I'm almost at the cap of how many points I can score. 3 out of my final 4 are out. I mean, I lost Iowa in the first round. So, I'm up there for now, but it's not going to last very long.
There's a number of busts going on in this bracket.
St. Peter's, beating Kentucky.
Yeah.
I hope they go all the way, They're kicking butt.
I was like, that was wonderful, because I picked Murray State in the Final Four, so I thought, this is beautiful. St. Peter's, go Peacocks. And then, they beat us. They beat the Racers. Oh, well.
Listen to you, us.
I'm off. I'm awful. I was a Murray State. I was all in on Murray State, buddy.
At one point, when sometime over the weekend, must have been Saturday or something, before Michigan State played, I was like, well, my bracket's busted. Now I just hope that somehow it's Michigan versus Michigan State. And as soon as Michigan State lost, I was like, no, let's just have the Peacocks win the whole damn thing. That'll be fun. I love chaos. Like, do it. Like, it's fun to watch.
And how often do they have to put Michigan State in the same damn bracket with Duke? It's like...
They know you're going to watch Izzo and Coach K.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist usually very often, but hell with that. That's crazy. We're playing down in God's country and down in North Carolina, where, everybody down there, goes by the Coach K mantra, and frickin' Michigan, who up in Indianapolis. Well, I'll tell you what, though. Juwan's doing a great job. Michigan's good. They're really good.
Well, they're really good. No one thought they were bad. It was a shock that they had the record that they had. If you would have told me going into this, like, hey, Michigan's going to make a run, I'd be like, yeah, I'm sure they are.
Yeah, no question. So, anyway, we're awful. All right, man, let's wrap this up with a quick round, something you want to talk about here. Well, hey, listen, I'm going to do a shot of Patron. I've been waiting to do it, and it's spring. I'm drinking an Oberon, so that's what I'm going to do. And I don't know what you guys are going to have. Kevin, what's your shot tonight before you talk?
Yeah, I'll just do a shot of Jack.
Classic.
Yeah, and I've just
Frank Sinatra's favorite whiskey.
Bobby Boy.
I've just got some Bullet bourbon. That's my
beautiful thing.
I stumbled on that pretty bad.
Here we go, gentlemen.
Hey, we're our last rounds. Hey, listen, my last round here it would be real quick, but just want to talk about baseball starting. Baseball maybe gets a bad rap, and again, I've told you guys, I grew up. Baseball was number one back when I was a kid. Football was starting to overtake it. But, in the 70s and 80s, the Kansas City Royals, Cincinnati Reds, Oakland A's, Los Angeles Dodgers, New York Yankees, Baltimore Orioles, Boston Red Sox. You guys know I'm a Tiger fan extraordinaire, love them. But I'm excited for baseball. I'm excited for the fact that they got this thing done. They've made some changes now. A pitcher now, after he's done pitching, can stay in the lineup. They just passed that. The players and them that came up with an agreement, he can stay in the lineup. I think that's an awesome thing. Also, extra inning games, you take a player and put him on second base. Believe that? So they want the games to get over. They don't want them to go like when we went to the Tiger Red Sox game, that your infamous game where you talked to Kurt Schilling and we saw the guys giving Mirabelli crap in the bullpen. And it went on for Mirabelli. It went on forever. But what a great game with the home runs from Ortiz and
Big
and
Papi
everybody.
hit a 2-run home run. Manny Ramirez got on second. And Big Papi hit a home run in the top of the ninth to beat the Tigers. That was a pretty badass baseball game to go to.
I will tell you, Kevin, as a dad, Bobby and I spent a lot more time at Major League Baseball than you and I did, or you and me and Matt.
I think we went to one Tigers game. I think I can remember.
Yeah, I regret that.
I mean, it's hard. Like I've got 3 little ones under 7 now. It's hard to.
Going to Tiger games with you guys, I had to take mom and 3 kids. With Bobby, it was just me and Bobby jumping in a car and going over. So
I'm not even a huge baseball fan, but I'm on the hook to coach my almost 4-year-old's t-ball team this year because no one will do it. I don't even like baseball. It's just like, can't we hit each other? Like, come on. But
baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet, man, they go together in the good old USA. I love it. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait for the first pitch. So enjoy it.
What do you got for us, Bob?
Well, April 16th on Fox, we have the USFL. We got football again. I have been campaigning the many producers of Tommy on Tap that we should be doing a USFL preview show. Jeff Fisher is the coach of the Michigan Panthers. I really like that they got the 8 original teams and revived them to do this thing with the USFL. I think there's so many leagues that pop up. The XFL.
The XFL was great that 2 years ago, 3 years ago now.
COVID killed
Houston
it,
Roughnecks.
Right?
Houston Roughnecks. Had a great run, undefeated. They were the champs. June Jones was the coach there. Their quarterback now. PJ Walker ended up going to the Panthers. Yeah, they had Sammy Coates, the Auburn grad, that was on their team. A couple other guys, I can't remember their names, but just. A great team. Great to watch football. It was one of the best spring league of footballs that I've seen. That was close to the NFL product. They let you could hear the coaches calling in the plays. So if you're familiar with a certain coaching tree, you knew what was happening the whole time. It was awesome.
Yeah.
The kickoffs. They did some things that they were trying out for the NFL, and I think isn't that what the USFL is going to do also, Bobby? Don't they have some?
So the XFL was corporately tied to the NFL. They existed under some entity similarly, but the USFL does not. However, the NFL and USFL are working together on rules, things that the NFL would like to implement but don't know maybe how they would work out. So it's kind of a test case to try it out in the USFL, and I think that's cool. I think there were a couple things that we got from the XFL that did get implemented into the NFL, I believe. But the thing that I think
and even if they haven't been, I think that it's opened the eyes for the rules committees to kind of look at them, right? Like the speed at which they were doing reviews was pretty great, I thought.
Yeah.
And you could hear everything that they were saying, and it would take maybe 20 or 30 seconds, and hey, let's press on with our lives and play.
Hey, with that said, did you hear what the Tennessee Titans proposed for overtime?
Yeah. If you score a touchdown and then get the 2 point, it's done.
And you go for 2 and get it, you win the game. If you don't go for 2, the other team gets the ball. So if you go down and score and you got the balls to go for 2, go for it. If you get it, you win. If not, the other team gets it.
As much as I'm not, like I said, I'm not a huge baseball fan, so I like that they're trying to find ways to shorten that game because it takes forever. But I love the old college playoff rules. I will watch for 7 years if that's how long it takes for you guys to keep going from the 20-yard line to win. I'll tell my kids hey, I said I was going to watch the whole game. I still got another 5 hours to go.
I remember.
I would watch it all day.
I remember if it was last year, a couple years ago, where it was 9 overtimes with Penn State. It's not the next time
LSU and Texas A&M had one that went forever. Yeah.
So the 3 of us, the next time that we talk to each other, are we going to be like, man, that football game was so long? No, we're going to be like, God, that football game was crazy.
I have to wait a whole week to watch football again? This is bullshit.
Yeah.
Baseball. The thing about baseball is you're not out of it until the last out. There's no time limit. There's nothing else, which is what happens in overtime.
Tommy, you already took your shot. Get off my toes. The last point I had to make about the USFL.
Frank White.
The last point I had to make about the USFL is that the XFL lost its money because COVID. It couldn't get people in. I was still going to Arizona State at the time, and we had a team, the Arizona Hotshots, that played at Sun Devil Stadium. And I went to one game, and nobody was there. So I really like what the USFL is doing. Sure, you might play for the Michigan Panthers or
New Jersey Generals,
Yep.
San Antonio Gunslingers.
so you might play
Houston
for them.
Gamblers, I think.
But all
Yep,
of those
Gamblers.
games are being held in, I believe it's Birmingham, Alabama. So you show up, and the idea is, all right, people from Alabama, come watch 4 football
And
games.
who's going to come watch football games? All those people around the
People
South
in
might come
Alabama.
and check it
So
out. Yeah.
I think that they've eliminated some of the financial difficulties. Obviously, you got to play the player, you got to pay the players, you got to pay the staff, the refs, and open up the facility. But now you only have to open up one facility. You're gonna sell tickets to people who it's like going to the like the state championship game. You just freaking go and you watch football from noon to 9. And you'd go home. But except now it's like June Jones and Jeff Fisher are coaches. I don't think June Jones is a coach, but
He's not, no.
Yeah.
but I think that the USFL is going to be a lot of fun to watch this spring.
Hey, it's football.
Yeah.
Hey,
All right, so for my final shot, I'll just I think I'm going to kind of talk a little bit more about the NCAA college basketball tournament. Like I've said a couple times, I'm not a huge basketball fan, but I love the tournament. I've been having a lot of fun watching it. Getting my sons to watch it with me a little bit, and I'm a Peacocks fan. I'm pulling for them all the way now. We're in the dark days between when football ends and when football begins again. Hopefully this USFL can kind of bridge that gap a little bit. Spring ball coming up, and hopefully Tommy on Tap and some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about through this dry period can help whet your appetite as we get ready for next fall and more football.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tommy on Tap. Next week, we're going to have something just as titillating as this week, and we hope to see you then.
Oh, titillating.
titillating.
It's Tommy on Tap, baby.
59, I'm a man. I'm 40.
Buy the kneecap off.
On the last play of the game.
It's Tommy on Tap.